Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. It is February 16th here in beautiful New Jersey. It's not that beautiful. It's actually a little bit rainy out. But I'm really excited for the show today because we have a couple guests. We're doing two guests back to back. And, of course, we're joined by Josh from Voltoro. Hi, Josh. Nice to see you.
Hi, Tatiana. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And our first guest is going to be Rik Willard from the Agentic group. Rik's group is based here in New York City, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his background, how he got into Bitcoin. So welcome to the show, Rik. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Tatiana. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you give everybody a little bit of background on how you got involved in Bitcoin and what's your background overall?
So my overall background is I started in the .com, sort of Web 1.0, and I had a boutique that we managed to just miss the first bubble and did okay with. I went into consulting and digital signage after that and was responsible for many of the signs you see in Times Square. Well, not all of them now, but for the first wave for sure, with a man named Barry Winston, who was negotiating a lot with the properties and real estate people, and I was doing the technology side in Times Square. I then went to Las Vegas for MGM Resorts and basically devised a lot of R&D for their digital signage, both internally and externally, with mobile bolted onto that after a while, and then social built into that, sort of moving people through retail spaces, right? Came back to New York in 2010 when the recession was in full swing, actually, and got into the VC space and worked with some early stage companies like Capture, which was sold to Aha Life, and then went further than that from there, and iLock, which does amazing 3D iris scanning work, and got involved in Bitcoin in late 2012, and was incubating companies under the Mint Combine brand, and also providing a think tank for the space. And we
Just a second, let me ask you a question. So how did you hear about Bitcoin, and what was your initial thought about it? What did you think about it before we move on to the rest of the history?
So Peter Bessinas, who many might remember as sort of the one of the originators of the early Bitcoin Foundation, was in town, and I had lunch with him, and we had sort of known each other through the .com world, and I paid for lunch, and he said, "I'm going to pay you back," and I said, "Well, it's not necessary, it's fine." And he said, "No, I want to pay you back in Bitcoin." I said, "Oh, you mean that thing that people are into down in gaming?" He said, "Yeah, definitely." So I said, "Hey, why not?" Okay, so I downloaded blockchain, the blockchain app on my phone, just right then and there. He transferred the amount of cash that I had spent in the price of Bitcoin at that time. And then I got kind of hooked. I said, well, let me track this space, because coming from advertising, as I did originally, it seemed to me that Bitcoin was sort of like this loyalty and rewards solution for the future on steroids. And I started imagining exchanges, brand-based exchanges and all kinds of crazy things. So I said, well, let me settle down here and first learn the space. So Mint Combine then explored the space with many, Major League Baseball, Procter and Gamble, and lots of large brands. And we wanted to figure out not only what people thought, and of course people didn't think much because they didn't know anything about it at the time. But, so it was part education. It was part, okay, here's the art of the possible. What do you think about this? How does it work with your loyalty points? How does it work? How does a blockchain maybe work in your supply chain? How can we dig into this and sort of come out together with some ideas about the future? And we were, as I said, incubating a few companies at that time that are now defunct. We found out that sort of early 2013 and around that space was a little too early to incubate companies in the space, unless you're going to throw a lot of money at them, like say a Coinbase, and they didn't even get funding until months and months later. So we decided to focus really on gathering information, and that was the genesis of Agentic Group. So we took all of that knowledge and we said, okay, there's a profile on the blockchain and on Bitcoin and the other 700 digital currencies now. People have sort of an idea of what's going on. So even though they know nothing, they know more than they used to know. So we said, how do we then be a Rosetta Stone, a sort of a informational black box between the technology the developers and the techno speak and sort of the vagaries of our industry, and people who are living in the real world now, who are more frightened than anything. They're frightened they'll be disrupted. They're frightened of, quote unquote, crime and this and that, Silk Road. They hear all of these negative things, and they still refer to those, even though Silk Road is so far in the past, right? So we said, okay, the best way to do that and to construct a valid pathway from here to there will be to create a series of events that cover different sectors right now in the blockchain, but really talking about digital currencies as a part of the blockchain, because you really can't separate the two at a certain in certain applications. You can't really separate the tokens from the blockchain. But we focus on the blockchain because that's what people are having an easier time understanding. And we then talk about, with industry professionals, industry leaders, in fact, in an open forum, how these things work, how they don't work right now, how they might work in the future, and try to make sense of that and create a trajectory, not only of conversation, but of understanding that we can then plug our members into. So we're a membership-driven organization. We have a lot of blockchain companies that are part of our ecosystem, and we have them speak with these particular industry leaders. And I can name a few, like Lijian Shan at Immigrant Fine Art Finance, and we did a fine art event a couple months ago. We're doing a real estate event tonight and tomorrow. We have people like Bob Gladstone, who's a developer who's done multi millions of dollars in building iconic buildings in New York City over the course of the years, a couple of generations, his family. Michael Brioni, who is the Senior Vice President and General Counsel of Immigrant Realty Finance. We have Kristen Saucier from Ubiquity, Reggie Middleton from Veritasium and Ultracoin, and just a lot of really smart people engage in this conversation over the next
Reggie's a really cool guy. I really like his work.
Yeah, he is. Reggie's a really smart guy. He is in a space where he's come to understand a lot of the esoterica when it comes to trading, digital currencies and wallets, and tokenizing activity, which we think is kind of brilliant.
So, being a New Yorker, how did did you guys have much to do with the bit license, or how did you try to get some influence during that monstrosity?
Yeah, we had some input in the bit license, maybe less than others, more than some. The one thing that I think people, and this goes back to my original thought about digital currencies when I first got involved in Bitcoin, what's really glaring in its omission, and this is a really interesting point about the New York State bit license, is that it names and omits by name the loyalty and rewards industry. I don't think people really pick that up. It covers the finance part, it covers the trading part, and it says this specifically does not cover loyalty and rewards. And I thought that was really interesting, because those lobbies have been so entrenched for decades in Washington, D.C., and in New York State, in every single state, really, in the union, that there is an amazing opportunity in that space to create currencies with pegged on brand value and brand equity.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be explored. And only a few people are really exploring them. And that's going to be that's $1 trillion opportunity minimum, especially if you look at the opportunity in the context of the world's unbanked. People who never step into a bank but know what Coca-Cola is, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the great thing about loyalty points, folks out there, is that when you just have a dumb point that you can do only what they want you to do with it, it's quite stagnant. But if you have a token that can unlock a Coke machine, in terms of send it there, you can spend it, or you can trade it for when you actually don't need those loyalty points and someone else does. But again, this opens up things to money laundering, or the concept of money laundering. When you have loyalty points that are transferable, it's quite an interesting legal side of things there, even though, I mean, I think money laundering's a bit of a silly concept anyway, really, but it's needed in some areas of the world for sure. But I think a lot of the time it's used to just basically control marketplaces and allow legacy, well entrenched, well.
Sorry, I'm the feed is
Basically. Pardon?
Okay, your feed was sticking just a bit in.
Oh.
But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, one of the facts that was uncovered in the fine art and blockchain discussion that we had a couple of months ago was that, yeah, the fine art market is sort of a $150 billion market globally, right? But the actual market is, they don't even know. It's from $1 to $2 trillion. It's and that a lot of that you can guarantee is laundered capital. And I think that if you're going to launder money, by the way, cash is probably the best way to do it, and always has been. And it's how it started. And so we're going to have these problems. We're going to have these sort of bad players, no matter what currency is being used, no matter what value is being used, and what store of value is being used, because people are always going to find a way to try to get around whatever system whatever system exists.
Yeah, Andreas Antonopoulos sent a tweet out a little while ago, and it rounded that up perfectly. It said something like if you can't buy drugs with your money, then it's not real money.
Yeah.
Because even though drugs might be something that you think is bad or terrible, it's there. It's something, and it's part of a marketplace. It's part of an economy, and money at its core should be a fluid thing that can flow around the economy. It is only a very new concept to basically try to control money. Instead of policing people, they police the money, and it's a very dangerous step, because it means that if you're politically in a country that's very locked down, or we always look at it from perspectives of safe countries. But if you're in a country that's ruled by an evil dictator that can just shut you off because you have some sort of negative view on the regime, they can just financially turn you off with the wrong digital money. And this is where I think it's so important now that we jump onto Bitcoin, because the ECB, the European Central Bank, just announced today that they are moving to ban or to stop printing the 500 euro bill. This is, again, another step towards digitalization of money and removing cash, which means they're going to go to a big brother state coin, government coin, bank coin, whatever you want to call it.
China.
Which will be extremely controlled. And so if we are going towards pure digital cash, that's where society's heading. We need to choose now an open version of that digital cash, which is Bitcoin, or a blockchain-based decentralized cash. And that's
Well, no, it's a really good point. I mentioned China just a second ago. I mean, they're testing digital currencies now. I guess it's based on the renminbi. But yeah, this sort of big brother state and the tracking of capital. I mean, don't get it wrong. I mean, people turn off bank accounts and cash all the time. The governments turn them off all the time.
Yeah.
It'd just be that much easier, actually. It turns that process into sort of a warrantless switch that allows you to just go click. Okay, that's it. That's a real danger. So having a sort of stateless currency like Bitcoin, and I would even go so far, by the way, as to say that once exchanges are in place for loyalty and rewards, that they will take the place of cash in many places and be largely unregulated in their ability to move in and out of different products and concepts. I mean, the biggest idea of Bitcoin, and I think you may agree with me, is the advent of decentralized consensus-based value. That is a huge idea. It's happened before. In America, before the Civil War, the U.S. had over 10,000 currencies. They were grocery store currencies or general shops, municipal currencies, state currencies, local bank currencies, and all of these found a way to be exchanged. And it was in some ways a huge mess, totally unregulated, really only employed locally for the most part. But I think we're going to go back to that as Bitcoin leading the way as a way of being on the internet. So it'll be a global phenomenon, not just a U.S. phenomenon or ancient Mesopotamian phenomenon when you had different coinage and all that kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Tatiana.
No, I didn't know that was a thing before. That's really interesting.
Yeah, the U.S. dollar, the greenback, was instituted by Lincoln and was originally a Civil War debt repayment instrument for the North, to repay the North for the debt incurred by the Civil War.
Yeah, I had seen the movie The Money Masters, so I knew about the greenback, but I didn't know that there were that many currencies being circulated before. Now, how do you see governments not being able to control that, though? I mean, is it because of, I'm working on a project called Fermat, and they're going to have end-to-end encryption on the devices. So is it that the government wouldn't be able to control that because they can't necessarily see onto everybody's phone?
Yeah, if the encryption is good, yeah. It's going to be, I think, a massive tug of war from here on in. That we're going to see people finding their affinity groups and their consensus globally on the web, figuring out a way to tokenize that value or monetize that value, if you will. And then you may find just pop-up currencies. I mean, I don't think anyone really knows what's going to happen. There may be currencies that are valuable today and worth $1,000 a token that are worth, $5 tomorrow, or nothing if they're completely broken by government forces or whatever. So I think that as we explore this place, this is why I think a Agentic group, and it's just a shameless plug, I know, but is so important, because the conversations simply can't be, here's the future over here, or, oh my God, no, over there. There really has to be a meeting of minds so that as we move forward in this space, we're doing, number one, things that aren't that are beneficial to human beings. And we really do. I want to start focusing in later this year and in 2017 on the really emerging market opportunities here, which I think are massive. But you have a bandwidth issue and you have a smartphone issue that still has to be overcome in these markets.
Yeah, but I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine in Kenya, and she was saying she was amazed when she just recently went back that everyone has a smartphone now. It's moved so quickly from the feature phone, the old Nokia with Snake on them, to now a smartphone. Yeah, they're not the same ones as here. They're really based Android devices, but they're there, right? And so it's happening. And I think back to your point of that we don't know what will happen, especially with loyalty points. Are they going to be used as money? I mean, the whole concept of M-Pesa, which is the currency, the digital currency now in Kenya, is that originally it was just people sending SMS credits. It wasn't meant to be money. It was just a way to load up your phone with SMS, but people found, hey, look, I don't have any cash on me. Can I just give you some SMS credits? I mean, you're going to spend that anyway. And this started, and this exploded because it was much easier as a cultural thing. And then they changed the name to M-Pesa, mobile Pesa, because their currency is called Pesa. And then BitPesa has now jumped in on that with the whole Bitcoin thing. But I think that's a really good point. Of you never know what value, if something is scarce and it can be moved around, it will be used as money.
Sure.
Like in prison, matches are used because they're handy, or
cigarettes. Yeah. Absolutely. Currency is where you find it, wherever people value whatever's happening, whatever the currency is of the day. And I was saying earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if we had pop-up currencies. Like if you look at, say, an entertainer, and Tatiana, it may strike home to you. One of the scenarios that we played around with at Min Combine was, what if you had a record label that had 50 artists? Each of those artists was issued a coin, And let's just say whether they're crowdfunded, to distribute those coins or not, let's say the coins were distributed. When these 50 acts go on the road, ostensibly, they have maybe, let's say an average, if you're relatively big, 50 dates a year, right? So it's 50 times 50, and it's like a stock market if you really think about it. Because who makes money in ticket sales? Really? Scalpers. Who makes the cash? Scalpers.
Yeah.
So you can almost eliminate scalping by simply having everyone be a scalper with their tokens. If I own Lady Gaga ticket tokens, but I live in Afghanistan, there's no way I'm going to a Lady Gaga concert. I'm going to sell those to the highest bidder on an exchange, and it's going to be a curve that goes kind of like that. It goes, lead up to the concert, and then with an optimum value, then boom, down to zero.
Great.
Concert, then boom, down to zero. So
I love the idea of like, there's a problem, so let's make everyone the problem, and then it's not a problem anymore.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's not a bug, it's a feature,
Yeah.
So is that the end of what you were saying, Rick? I'm sorry, I thought that you were going to go on.
Yeah, it's just one of the concepts, one of the scenarios that we played out, because as you know, Tatiana, we had at the time on our board Phil Quartararo, who was whom you met, who was the former CEO of Virgin and Warner Records, and so we would bring in people, and we still do, bring in the same caliber of people to sort of play out these scenarios, but now we discuss them in public, and we actually try to get to the meat of what's possible now. And how do you get there from here? What are the first steps that have to happen before you can get to a place where you have sort of an artist exchange like that? A lot has to happen before you can get there. But we have a really good idea of who wants to play in that sandbox. We have a pretty good idea of the technologists and the companies that can play in that sandbox. And we have a really good handle on those funds and individuals that want to fund those operations, which we bring all together in one place.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I'm looking forward to the music event that you're going to be having. And with Tatiana Coin, we're kind of experimenting not only with having artists have their own currencies, but how, there is a need for the record label to a certain extent in terms of the record label services. But just in the past couple days alone, I've been doing a lot of research, and it's just remarkable how the music industry is structured, how much of the the money generated is sucked out to pay for all these other ancillary services, and nobody's watching the money. There's no way of keeping track of the money. There's nobody who has, basically everybody's spending the money that the artist themselves is generating, and nobody has a reason to curb that enthusiasm for spending.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have a really good point that we found that's endemic in all industries, is that many industries in the old model, that's a couple of centuries old, the money is really made in the inefficiencies. That's the same with music and publishing and everything, and all that being sort of disparate pieces of it. It's in money transfer, like Western Union, you have like 7 levels before the money gets, where they charge anywhere from 12 to 20% in some markets to move your money. They have to pay at least seven gateways. So that's where a lot of pushback comes from, is that peer-to-peer value sort of obliterates those middlemen to a large degree, and so it changes the economics of the industry. And I'll also say this last thing: the reason why we call our operation what we're covering the Internet of Value, quote unquote, is that in the 3 years of conversations that I've had with corporations and individuals and funds and everything, when you talk about technological disruption, like the early internet, which I was a part of as well, the very first internet, like brochures online, basically, that nobody could see because nobody had a connection. You talked about communication, right? And so, yes, that had a highly disruptive effect 10 years later for television and for music and radio, etc. But when you talk about money, and you're really talking about something that hits a lot closer to people's psyche, because you start to play around with the notion of value itself. What is value? And when you ask that question, by definition, you are putting at stake something that person has based their life on. That definition of value. So you're attacking their personal values simultaneously. And that's the biggest hurdle, I think, that that Bitcoin really has is you have people like Nouriel Roubini, the economist, saying, well, it has no value, it has no value, it has no value. So I shot back to him. I said, well, what value does gold have in this day and age? Gold has literally no value. It looks pretty, it's sexy, you know, you can give it to your spouse or partner or a friend, and they think you like them more. But besides that, as a conductor, we have lots better materials out there now. We have lots better materials for everything. Diamonds as well. You know, we can make diamonds now. They're just as perfect as any diamond that took 1,000 years to make. So what are the value of these things? So when you question that, you have to question then, what have I based my life on? And it's not really as much of a stretch as you might think it is, because our you know, society, by and large, in the world, has based their life on the pursuit of capital, the pursuit of money. So when you change that conversation, you change almost everything about how we think about the world. That is one of the biggest issues that we'll have to face in our community moving forward.
Yeah, you're here. I think it's actually a great question to be asking people. You know, when people are like, well, why is Bitcoin valuable? And it's like, well, it's because people believe that it is. And then all of a sudden you have an ability to tear down a lot of the existing structures. I know that we have our guest, Arthur Falls. We're praying that we're going to be able to connect with him perfectly. But in the interim, Rik, I wanted to say thank you very much for coming on the show today. Do you want to talk a little bit about the event that you're having this week, in case people are in New York and they're able to come? I think you still have a few tickets left on Eventbrite. I know it was close to selling out.
Yeah, it's pretty tight. We have a few left. Yeah, we're going to be exploring, you know, real estate over 2 nights, tonight and tomorrow evening, at the Rise Center, the Barclays Rise Center on West 23rd Street in New York City. We're on Eventbrite. As I said, you can see a lot of the information and the speakers at agenticgroup.com/upcoming events. But that said, we have a lot of interesting people. I said Michael Broido, sorry, of Emigrant. I mispronounced his name last time. Bob Gladstone, Reggie Middleton, Christian Saucier from Ubiquity in Vancouver. We have Roy Abrams, a CEO of Real Connects, the online real estate site. And I apologize for that. Sorry about that.
It's okay. It happens to me all the time.
Digital world. I have too many phone lines. So, yeah, it's going to be an amazing event. We're almost sold out, not quite. A lot of real estate people, a lot of venture people, a lot of hedge fund people. We just recently made an alliance with Citco, the large global hedge fund management company. We're actually located in their offices now on Park Avenue in New York City. So we have access to a lot of hedge funds, and they're making bets in the space now. So it's going to be really a very interesting conversation about how real estate can be affected today, how it will be affected tomorrow, and we're going to chart the course moving in that direction.
Well, I'm really looking forward to attending tomorrow. I know I put quite a few people on the list, but hopefully they'll really enjoy it. And I'm happy to see that there's great events happening in New York. And to be able to educate other people about it is really important. So I really look forward to it. Thank you very much for coming on. Where can people find you? What's the website one more time?
Okay, Agentic Group, one word, agenticgroup.com. That's the website. And to learn more about the upcoming events, you can simply agenticgroup.com/upcoming events.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rik. I really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
See you tomorrow. Bye. Okay,
Well,
everybody. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, fascinating stuff. We always have fascinating guests, Tatiana. I'm always, you know, I always look forward to Tuesdays. And last week's show was great with Andreas M. Antonopoulos. That was good, folks. If you check out liberty.me channel, you'll be able to subscribe there. And I think we're going to start reposting on the Tatiana channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to be putting it onto Forevermore Tatiana, which is my YouTube channel, and also we're of course broadcasting on Let's Talk Bitcoin. Actually, let's do something different, because I feel like every time that we talk about LTB, we always put the magic word at the end. So I want to trick all the people who are trying to game the system.
Yeah.
What should we have be our phrase? What do you think?
Well, exit.
Exit? Okay,
Yeah,
fine. One word, exit. Don't exit the show, everybody. Just exit the system.
yeah.
Um,
Exit the system. Exit the fiat money system and jump into Bitcoin and gold. If you're useful
great.
for it.
Okay, so our next guest is no stranger to the Let's Talk Bitcoin audience. Although the folks at Liberty.me may not know him, Arthur Falls is coming to us originally from New Zealand, although he claims he was born in the United States with his accent. I don't actually believe him. But Arthur, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Tatiana.
I'm glad that we can hear you. I'm not sure that this will be our case the entire time, but we
Maybe
can give it
not.
a try. Okay, Arthur, so for people who aren't familiar with you, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, how you stumbled into the wonderful world of Bitcoin.
Well, start of 2013, I moved to Melbourne, and I couldn't tell you exactly what happened because I was just I was there and I was looking for work, because it was kind of this big move, and as you do when you're looking for work, you spend a lot of time on the couch on the internet, and I think Bitcoin popped up a couple of times, piqued my interest, and then for some reason I thought, fine, I'll read this white paper thing, like whatever, and it was it was kind of like reading a different language for a while, but then like on my second time through, I started to really kind of understand the ideas a bit better, and it's basically is there a clicking on the mic there?
Yes.
Anyway. Huh. And it, I don't think it's on my end. And anyway, I just suddenly like the idea just clicked, and really they won't.
No, and you're not supposed to be talking to me. You're
Sorry
supposed to
about
be talking. I'm talking internally on the group chat. We're just a little worried that we're not going to be able to use the audio for LTB because they're very strict with their audio. But we can keep going and we can try and pass it off later. But if there's a way that you can make sure that your connection is a little bit tighter because it's definitely on your end.
Is it?
It's a microphone. It's a connection issue.
Oh, well, I mean, yes, I think everything's plugged in. Anyway, yes. So it was just this kind of revelation when I finally understood the symmetry of the software, and then I just obsessed myself with learning about Bitcoin for the following year, and there came a point where it was like, wow, I've invested so much into this, I better make a podcast or something, and so along came Beyond Bitcoin, and that was I did 27 episodes about the altcoin space, and then the Ether Review, which is my latest endeavor.
So were you involved in tech stuff before that or no?
Absolutely not. No, I've been an itinerant laborer my whole life.
See, this is what I think is really interesting about Bitcoin, is that Bitcoin really gets the biggest variety of different people to come into the space. It's just really unusual, I mean, how in the world would you end up there? I'm a musician. Josh came from the television background. Now all of a sudden he's working in gold. So I don't know. I think that's a really cool feature.
It is cool because the thing is, like, there's so many facets to the software. It really is where it's where code meets philosophy, and in my kind of brief and shallow exploration of philosophy at some stage in my early 20s, it seemed like there wasn't a lot happening there. There wasn't a lot that was relevant to today, that was, or to the people of today, that's taking place in kind of philosophical circles. Not a lot of relevant thought, but you find in with Bitcoin, there's so many current issues that are being directly addressed in this new communication medium, and I think that is why all of us find ourselves together interested in this, in something that would typically seem completely irrelevant to our ways of thinking and our ways of life.
Absolutely. So can I ask you something? And when we were talking before, we had a very long discussion about how much you love Ethereum, how Ethereum is the chosen one, how Bitcoin is screwed, and it was a very irritating conversation. But you are quite knowledgeable about Ethereum, and since this show tries to focus on people that are not really familiar with cryptocurrency necessarily, I mean, sometimes people are, but I like to keep it for new people to the space. I'd be curious to know, what is it that you love about Ethereum, and where are the limitations that you see in Bitcoin?
So the limitations of Bitcoin are basically it was the first one. I mean, Bitcoin came along and it introduced the term recombinant innovation, the idea of taking old things and recombining them to create something new. That's what Bitcoin did with all of these ideas that have been kicking around to solve the problem of how do we make an internet currency. And the insights that were uncovered in the process of doing just that can be extended far beyond just Bitcoin. They can change so much more of our world than just money. And in the process of generalizing, that's kind of the buzzword, I suppose, that should be applied to Ethereum. Ethereum is a generalization of the technology that underlies Bitcoin. And in generalizing that technology, we find that you can do a lot of stuff that you just can't do with Bitcoin, while at the same time maintaining all the functionality of Bitcoin. And the reason is that you need a token for the game theory to work. You need to have a cryptographic token or a token of value, so that you can incentivize behavior on the network. And yeah, so I mean, I don't want to get too technical, but the beauty of Ethereum is that it can literally do anything that any cryptocurrency could possibly do can be done using Ethereum. Theoretically, not just yet. It's not complete. Ethereum is very much a work in progress. But
well, it doesn't even have anything out yet, right? I mean, like, someday in the next couple of days it's going to have home something or other, and then that's like, we haven't even tested it yet.
Well, I've been right now. I'm working for Consensus, which is an Ethereum. It's an Ethereum-oriented blockchain kind of venture studio, and we've been talking about how best to communicate about Ethereum and about what it can do, and increasingly, I think people need to focus less on Ethereum as as kind of an altcoin, because it has emerged from this altcoin boom of 2014 and this year as well, and in 2015 as well, because the real magic is what can be built with it. It's the actual deployments that you can do. And I know with Voltoro, Josh, we have you have these. You can invest in gold and track those gold certificates using the Bitcoin blockchain. Have I got it right there?
No, actually, we don't tokenize the gold because that would drop us into some regulatory nightmare waters. So we basically allow people to instantly trade just into gold that's assigned gold in their legal name as their property, and then instantly trade back out. So there's no token. So you can't send gold because that opens us up to money laundering. Oh, hello, Arthur.
I'm back, guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. Did you hear what I said?
No, I didn't.
No. Yeah, we don't tokenize the gold because regulatory craziness would allowing people to send tokens around the place of value of gold is illegal, because we would be issuing our own currency. So company like eGold in the 90s, early 2000s discovered that that's very illegal. So we allow people to instantly buy the gold and then sell the gold again for Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah, because there's a platform called Digix building on Ethereum, and I mean, I have no idea about the regulatory side, but that's exactly what they propose to do, and they're based out of Singapore, and I mean, I guess it comes down to these regulation, these jurisdictional differences and about what you can, what is and what isn't possible.
Not only that, there are some things that some economical things to do with backing tokens with the physical assets. So if you, for instance, gold, that's the one that everyone can think of. If you back, let's say, one token with 1 gram of gold, what happens is that you have real life expenses to holding that gold. You have insurance, you have people with armed guards, you have big steel doors, and those costs have to come from storage fees. And if you have those storage fees being taken away from that little gram of gold flying around, then you have what's called demurrage, which means the token slowly loses value, or that value has to come from somewhere. So there are some tricks, tricky sticking points with backing a digital token with gold. I'm sure, because the perfect scenario would be to allow a token to be flying around that's backed by gold, for sure. Ultimate fantasticness. Except, yeah, the regulatory framework and that what I just mentioned with real life fees can be with money, because when people get $1, they want to know that that's worth $1, not 90 cents because of demurrage or storage fees and stuff.
Okay, and an interesting thing, what is possible with Ethereum is that you could, and I'm not sure that anyone has this is probably what they're doing. I don't want to go too much into suggesting that that Digix are doing certain things that they're not doing, but it is definitely possible to track those expenses and charge them against the token as it's traded around, and you can do that in a way that's simple and replicable, and can be applied across the entire platform very, very simply. I say very simply, but enough that it's certainly feasible for a small operation like Digix to come up with a system like that. And I mean, you can imagine the fact that there is a solution in Ethereum to exactly the problem that you're expressing. Whether or not it's possible in a regulatory sense, that's a whole other question, and that's really messy. But at the end of the day, there's a clear pathway to solving any problem that cryptocurrencies have in the past faced using a technical problem using Ethereum, and that is what's amazing.
So I think just to break it down for the folks at home, Ethereum isn't just a clone of Bitcoin and then some things tweaked. It's an actual programming language within the blockchain. Actually, Bitcoin has that too. It has the scripting language. It's just not as, like Arthur said at the start, it's the first iteration. But I think it's still evolving. Like, people are always putting bips in to help that grow and that get extended. And so I think we'll definitely see a nice battle rolling out there. But I think the original thought of Ethereum wasn't to be an actual coin or money. It was actually for decentralized cloud computing, to allow people to release decentralized code out onto the web that would run without a server, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it does. And those are called, those small computer programs are called smart contracts, and they run on the Ethereum virtual machine, the EVM. And that's so arcane and it's so advanced. It's totally amazing. Because it allows you to do crazy stuff. It's programmable money. I mean, that's one of the buzz phrases that people use to describe Bitcoin. But Ethereum is just, the programming ability is so advanced. You can do anything with it. Quite literally, it's Turing complete. You can write any program. You could write a version of Doom 3 and run it on the Ethereum virtual machine, maybe. I'm sure it would be phenomenally expensive. But because you have to pay for these, you have to pay for the execution of the contracts. And on a distributed machine like this, where it's guaranteed that this program will be run in a fault-tolerant fashion, that's in a trustable fashion. That's a really, that's an expensive service to procure, especially at the stage of the technology's advancement. I mean, in the future it might be less expensive, but at the end of the day, you don't need a lot of a program to be secure, trustable, and safely executable. It just needs to be the important bits, like tracking the quantity of a token, tracking expenses that might be charged against it, things like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, that was a little over my head. Arthur, what are you doing?
Sorry about that.
Yeah, what are we doing in New York? What are you doing in New York? So you started working with Consensus now. What's your goal over there?
Well, really, it's educating about Ethereum. There's so much it's been a real challenge so far, because I think people focus on Ethereum, and the number of concepts that are required that you need to build up before you can really grasp the vision of Ethereum is, it's immense. And I don't think it's reasonable to ask that of people at this stage. Eventually, it's like, think of when people moved from the horse and cart to the Model T. Think of what it would have been like for mechanics to learn how an engine worked. It's mind-boggling stuff. But then again, and that's kind of where we are now. We're moving from the horse and cart to the car, and I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that people have a hard time piecing together all these new ideas. Instead, what we need to do is explain what this can do, and what it can do is tremendous. There are all these everything that was come up with in the altcoin boom. Along with all kinds of other things. Web 3.0 is one of the is another one of the buzzwords.
And what does that mean?
Well, Web 3.0 is kind of like the internet as we know it, combined with the internet of value. So the idea that you can have fluid transfer of value between your accounts of, say, your Steam account, your bank account, and your Skype account.
What's a Steam account?
Steam, Steam, Valve, Valve, the computer game company.
The gaming,
Steam?
It's a gaming.
Oh my God! I'm asking you to talk to real people, not to freaking gamers.
No,
anyway,
it's pretty popular. It is
among
really
nerds, not among regular humans.
Anyway. But yeah, so my goals at Consensus anyway are media strategy and education. Those are the big things that the space doesn't really have, and that's what we're trying to pull off. It's a challenge, but the fact is the value's there. The platform can do amazing things, and I think soon enough we'll have a pretty good strategy for explaining that and putting that into a serialized educational video format.
Could I just ask some pure basics? How many, because Ethereum is made up of the Ether token, just like the Bitcoin blockchain is made up of Bitcoins that float around. How many Ether are there? How many were pre-mined? How many are ever going to be in existence? How many are released every X? How many, all this sort of information, how does it work?
It's actually a red herring, and if you've heard talking about Ether, the token, if you've listened to the Ether Review podcast, we've actually never spoken about the token before, because it really distracts from what the thrust of the Ethereum project is. The token is just there as a game theory kind of incentive tool. It's quite complex. To discuss the token takes us completely away from the value proposition of Ethereum itself.
Yeah, the only reason I bring it up is because it's skyrocketing in price at the moment, and I don't know whether it's a good price or a bad price, because I literally don't know how many are going to be. I don't quite understand it, because it's not like Bitcoin where it's totally cuts off at 21 million, right? It's in the billions, and it sort of keeps going. I'm not sure.
Well, it's only 77 million right now. There's a few more to mine, not much though. It's the mining phase of it's tapering off, and it's about to switch over to proof of stake. That should happen. It's toward the end of the year. It should switch over to proof of stake, at which point the market cap will be or the available supply will be set. I'm not sure exactly what the exact number is, and which is at the same time slightly embarrassing. But also it's because I don't ever look at the token. It's not really significant to the aspect of the platform that I've been exploring, which shows you how far from the old kind of cryptocurrency kind of paradigm that we are used to. This really is. Ether is not a unit of exchange, or it's not designed to be a unit of exchange. It's purely a mechanism for rewarding a certain type of participation in the Ethereum network.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm such a fan of that. I think it's good to know how much a currency will be. I mean, that was the impetus for like creating alternative currencies, is because governments can be printing it infinitely. But maybe I'm not understanding the use of it.
It's because
It's
people look at Ethereum as if it's another altcoin, but really Ether is not Ether is a token that's used as to incentivize a certain type of behavior on the Ethereum in the Ethereum kind of ecosystem. It's not meant as a currency or a unit of exchange. It's just there as a tool to encourage.
But it can be used as that, right?
You can use it like that, but stable. You want something that has a stable value. I mean, for exchange, you want something that has all the things that Tatiana just expressed, which are stable.
all the more reason to know how much there's going to be. I mean, if you want to have stable value, you can't just be like, oh, we'll just turn it on whenever we want.
Yeah, I mean, it's the issuances of Ether was set from the outset. Like I said, the only reason I don't know is because it's not something I've looked at all. I'm sure I did at one stage, but it's been so long. It's because Ether is not a cryptocurrency or a unit of exchange. It's a tool for the network to operate. But
you have to spend it, right, to execute a smart contract. So you still need, for me, the amount that's ever going to be in existence kind of gives me an idea in my mind vaguely. It can start to be a piece of the puzzle of how much something should be worth. Because, for instance, if I'm going to go buy a car and I look at it, it looks amazing, and I'm willing to spend a heap of money on it, but then I turn around the corner and see that there's a car yard there with 100,000 of the same car, then I'd be like, oh, well, I'm going to pay a lot less for this one because there's just way more just around the corner. So it's an important part of the economic theory behind cryptocurrencies is to sort of, I know that you're saying it's not a currency, but for me, and you're right. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, look, the value of Bitcoin isn't important, but I mean, I kind of disagree with that. A lot of people jump into Bitcoin when it's cruising up, and I notice a lot more people are kind of bored with it when it sits flat and stale.
The difference is that Ether is not a token designed for. I'm looking up how many are out there right now. It's not a token that's designed for exchange. The idea is if you want to exchange value, you're much better to create a stable value token on the Ethereum network. And use that to be, there are several endeavors in that direction, and use that to exchange value. Whereas man, this is actually proving really difficult to find. Whereas the expected issuance, here we go, expected issuance schedule. Yeah, whereas Ether is it's there for kind of trading and stuff, but when it comes to executing contracts and paying the Ethereum virtual machine to execute contracts, which is what the Ethereum virtual machine is, the kind of compute architecture. It's like the giant computer that runs all of these small computer programs. To pay that to execute these contracts, you need to to pay that to execute these contracts. There's just a market value for contract execution, and that market value will be it'll be the same whatever the price of Ether is. So it's not like it's not like the issuance has anything immediately to do with that.
Well, what is it pegged to?
It's not pegged to anything. It's pegged to the cost of computing on the using the Ethereum virtual machine and the value of executing contracts on the Ethereum virtual machine. Do you kind of see what I'm saying? Like, it's not about the Ether token at all. The Ether it is a cryptocurrency, but it's not designed for exchange. It's just something that can interface with the Ethereum virtual machine, and it has a value that's completely subjective. It's up to the person who how much you value executing a contract on the Ethereum virtual machine. Do you kind of see what I'm saying?
Are you competing against other contracts that want to execute on that machine?
In theory, yes, but at the same time, then the machine itself the market forces will just scale the machine to meet the demand.
Okay.
So,
gotcha.
Obviously there are limited resources, and there's a market value of executing code on the Ethereum virtual machine. But if that market value increases, if the market demand increases, then the resources themselves will increase, and so will the real price of Ether, so to speak. But it's right now it's so highly speculative. The entire cryptocurrency itself is such a speculative endeavor.
Sorry, yeah, I just want to take it back a bit and just bring it back down to earth for the people listening out there. What are some of the things that a normal Joe blogs can do on this Ethereum network? What sort of programs? How can it benefit people's lives? In terms of a case, like a concept or something you can do. I'm sure there's things with self-driving cars and all this sort of stuff, but just some scenarios that actually bring it home to people about what you can do.
Well, the one that comes to mind immediately, because we were speaking about this yesterday, is Ujo. Ujo is a music platform that Consensus is developing, and it has Imogen Heap has issued a song on there to as kind of a test tool. I should test use case. I'll send you guys a link to that actually. But the idea is you can track ownership of intellectual property, and which would interest you tremendously, Tatiana. Very much all the things that Counterparty can do. The big thrust behind creating a network where people can issue their own tokens to represent things like intellectual property is so that you disintermediate the creation of a distribution or a payment platform like the music industry. So you put people directly in touch, certainly musicians, directly in touch with fans, so they can interact directly, as opposed to paying some huge lumbering corporate entity to be the middleman. And I mean that's the promise of all blockchain, but I just think that Ethereum does it more seamlessly than any other platform so far. Being that it's general, it's naturally it's a new and very difficult thing to express how exactly it works. That's kind of that's the communication barrier that we're working on right now.
Yeah, I think that we're going to need a lot of different use cases in order to make it understandable for people. But anyway, we're coming up on the hour right now, so we have to cut things a little bit short. But now that you're in New York, maybe you can come on again soon. And where can people catch up with you, Arthur?
Well, just follow me on Twitter at Arthur Falls or at Ether Review. That's my podcast. I've got a blog coming up relatively soon, and check out consensus.net as well. That's consensus with a Y at the end there. It's a really great company, and they're doing some really incredible things. There's a lot of cool platforms and projects on there.
Very cool. Alrighty, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Rik Willard, who no longer is on the show right now, but you can also check him out at the Agentic group. Josh, we can find you on Vaultoro.com. And you can find me, Tatiana Moroz, at tatianamoroz.com or cryptomediahub.com. We look forward to another show. I think next week will be the last one, and then I'm taking off some time because I'm going to be traveling quite a bit. I'll be over at Liberty Forum this weekend with Lynn Ulbricht. We're trying to raise money for Ross's appeal, which is extraordinarily expensive. Lots of interesting news about that. So stay in touch, everybody. There's going to be a special show with me, Jeffrey, and Lynn on Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern next week. So you can tune in then. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you to Liberty.me and Let's Talk Bitcoin, of course, for airing. Oh, and I think we're going to be on LRN.
Oh, yeah. And if you've missed the magic word, because you're a cheater and always come to the end, it's in the middle of the show.
Wait, why are you telling them? He's fired. No mas. All right. Bye, everyone. See you later. Thanks.